and how you're inspired by nature.
Yes.
Elaborate on that.
I think nature is just got so many aspects. There's so much detail in it. There's so much to draw on, and quite naturally, there's a great deal of positivity that comes from it. And I think, as as human beings, I think there's so much more that we need to understand. But in context of your home and your interior, I think it's important to respond and bond to nature in your own home, because it's giving you that immediate sense of belonging, and it's innate and it's personalised. So I go through and I source images so that you can actually find what level of response you have emotionally to different images. So I mentioned earlier today about if you're going on a holiday, you already anticipate how you want to feel on your holiday. You know where your stress levels are at. You know what you need to relax, and it is essentially nature that provides that energy as far as offering. So if you want to go to a sandy turquoise beach, you can identify the emotions you're trying to connect with, or the energy, if you like, that you're trying to connect with. But if you want an alpine holiday that's cold and brisk and you've got the warm fires, again, it's the sense of nature and that connection with that aspect.
Sure.
So what I do have is I've got a selection of images that give example to these, and some examples will show how you can interpret one image that gives you a particular feeling into a space, a kitchen, a bedroom, or something like that. So essentially what you're doing is you're identifying how you respond to the image in nature, whether it helps you feel inspired or energized, or it might help you relax and feel calm. And every space requires a different response.
Sure. Okay, so let's go through the images.
Okay, so we're going to Norway first.
I love it. So we're going around the world, are we?
Pretty much.
Okay, are these your holiday
I'm going
snaps?
on a holiday! In my dreams.
Right.
Yeah. So here we are. Like, one of the most important things I believe that nature offers that is invigorating, whether it's calm or whether it's more energetic, is contrast. So these images are in a very cold place, but they're taken at a particular time in the day where you have the sunset that provides a great contrast. Here, with the lighting in that small village, it just creates a great contrast between the blue and the orange.
It almost looks like the village is on fire.
It is lighting. It's okay. Everyone's safe.
It's stressed there for a moment. Yeah, okay.
But it's beautiful. You get a range of depth of the rockery with the browns and the taupes and the charcoals, but it goes into the whites, it goes into the blues, but even in the ocean section, it goes into deeper ranges of sort of warmer, deeper, almost mauve type blues.
Those images almost could have been the colour inspiration for this stage.
Effectively, yes.
Right.
And I wanted to highlight that contrast between warmth and cold. So there's a few images that work on that. This is a part of Iceland where the lake, it's a glacial lake, but this is how the ice actually forms. It forms in these sheets. So to me, that's just fascinating. It's a beautiful shot. To me, that feels like morning sunrise, kind of feels quite, it feels calm, but at the same time, it feels hopeful with, the context of a new day. So the contrast works beautifully there, and you can derive a great deal of colours from that. This is another one showing the contrast in that you've got the sunlight coming in on that large section of ice, but you've also, to the left, you've got that coldness. So it's sort of feeling both when you look at that. Ta-da! And that's night time.
Okay, there we go.
Voila. This one I love because you've got the warmth in the rock. It's such a beautiful ochre yellow, but you've also got a very rich depth in the ocean. And I think what's fascinating about that, it's icy, but you've got that whole unknown underneath. So nature gives you that opportunity to delve into conceptually and philosophically as much as what suits you. So you actually, when you look at images, you're actually delving into what matters to you, and you're drawing things out that perhaps you may not have normally identified within yourself, but it's part of you feeling comfortable within yourself and representing and celebrating yourself.
So what you're saying is use the imagery to support what you want to do from a colour perspective.
Yes.
But also from a design perspective.
All the elements, design, so every single element. And this is an example how those images can be translated. So looking through those previous images, you might feel really connected to that Icelandic scene. Norway may mean something to you. But also you might like just the water, the freshness, the crispness of the cold. You don't want to feel cold, but you like that crisp element.
Sure.
So a translation in an interior such as this with the kitchen, it's a way to create the elements. So that neon lighting in blue is creating that ice blue that you get in icebergs or glaciers, where you do literally get that blue in the depths. But you've got the white, as you've seen. You also had the rocks in that, you know, where we thought the village was on fire. It wasn't. But you've got the rocks and the white. So you're basically bringing in those three elements of primary colours. Here it's not using the orange, but this is a simple, but it's actually quite detailed.
Sure.
But the offering is quite simple to translate into
and with the, I take it that's a laminate there, with the wood.
Yes.
The laminate there is that you've actually brought that element of nature in there as well.
Exactly.
But interestingly, when you look at that image, my first impression is if you didn't have that depth of brown there, that would be quite a austere kitchen,
right.
wouldn't it?
That's right. Because if you go back to the images quickly, that's the one we were missing. If you're going back to those, you can see the contrast, the warmth and the cold.
Yes.
But you can see particularly, here you get the rockery.
Yes.
It's the brown with the white.
And the fire creating warmth.
Yeah, exactly. And the blue. See, this one I love. That's the one that was nighttime when we last visited this place. You know, all that colour in the foreground versus all the colour in the background. You know, there's a lot of contrast there, but there's a lot of variation. We've talked about layering and we've talked about varying the colours. So here you can see the way that splashback and the lighting above the cabinetry, you can see how there's a variation of the blue to the white. It's not just a flat bang colour of one colour and another block and another block. That's an integrated effect. So this is a mineral and gems close up. And I love the fact that it looks like it's to the left, it's like it's on fire in contrast with the aqua and the blues. It's just very, very invigorating in that palette. But it can be interpreted for artwork. Like none of these nature images that might be inspiring you have to be used literally in a space. Like we've got the literal owls here. They're beautiful, but next to them are abstract, contemporary interpretations of the colour palette that we're looking at. So this is another way to interpret those previous colours.
I'll never look at nature again the same.
It's fascinating. Look, if you see, birds have got it right. If you really want to know how colour is done well, birds. I've got many to show you.
Well, the saying is nature never lies. I guess that's where it comes from, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So for this, we had this particular image in our previous interior option. And just the way with the, you know, you get that luminous quality with the actual plumage and the feathers. But you can see with the yellow orange, you can see with the teal and even the green, there's so much variation in each colour. And it's quite soft, but also the black and the white. It's the proportioning that's most important if you want to take a direct colour palette. Because if that image is giving you a sense of calm, if that's what you're after, or you're feeling invigorated and inspired, you break it down to the colour ratio as well to know how to translate successfully.
And I like the way you spoke before about the tone of the wall here, that it's got yellow and brown in the charcoal, nearly black. But when you go back to that bird image there, you can see that that's not actually black; it's blue black, isn't it?
That's right.
So you got that.
It's a cold.
It's a cold black.
Cold black. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Interesting about how get your colours right, get your base colours right. And what a great example to look at to be able to do that. And whoever said blue and green should never be seen?
I don't know.
I mean, clearly they didn't look at nature, did they?
I haven't heard them for a long time.
No. So forget that one.
But, John, you're quite right because you've got so much variation there. But when you look at an abstract translation of that image, so you might not want a bird in your room, but the colour palette you might love. So there's ways for it to be interpreted. And I think on, John, what you're saying with the colour, theories, whether warm or cold, it is very important to appoint an expert to define your colour theory, I think, in the right tonal variations, because if it clashes, it doesn't feel comfortable.
Sure. Yeah.
So just a close-up, again, that just shows the variation.
And look at the tone. Look at the going back. I mean, a quick look at that. It's blue. It's aqua. It's not.
No,
you've got all these different layers of blues, which,
and if you get technical in it, there's a lot of black in there. There's also red in there. There's a little bit of yellow, but quite a lot of red. But then you've got that little bit of yellow, gold, orange in there that just sort of, gives it that impact. But another just abstract interpretation of the colour palette, if that's more your style and gives you that feel.
David, Cassandra touched on the word layering before.
Well, as you say on the stage, we've layered from the floor up. There's a base colour, there's a darker color, and then there's a lighter color again, and it just gives it definition. And when you look around the walls, it's all laid. It draws you into the space. It makes it feel homely. You know, inviting, which is what you want. You don't want that coldness.
Sure. Well, my understanding is you have carpet or you have a rug. But here we've got a carpet with a rug and another rug.
And another rug.
So what's the rule?
There isn't one. It's what suits you, really. I mean, really, it's how you define the space, how you want to use the space. I mean, this has been done to show people what can be done, you know, in an area in your house. It's, yeah.
But layering, and the word eclectic interiors has been used for many years now, and somebody once said it means organised chaos, eclectic interiors, which I think it actually does, because it's not just about throwing stuff together. No. But when you say, okay, there are no rules, but there are rules here. I mean, it's dimension, it's size.
It's dimension, but it works on two ways of looking at it. It's on the furniture and how the furniture sits in the space, or the space. So you might have an 8-seater dining table, which is quite long. Now, you know, the general rule, if you're doing a rug for that, you take the size of the table and you allow 700 mil around the perimeter of the table, and that will give you plenty of space to move your chairs out when you're sitting down on the table. However, that might not work if it's in a very large open space room. You need to have that balance. It's all about a balance. It's like nature. It's about a balance and how you use the space and how you want the space to be, how you feel about it, you know. So that's the rules. That's kind of the rules.
We're going to call you the layering king. It's going to stick now. Okay.
Can you make sure it's layering?
Okay.
Okay. So again, this is just a different interpretation of those same colours. So from the bird, you can kind of extend into many aspects. So it's about connecting in and identifying how you feel, and if that particular emotion that image or memories perhaps are evoked, then it's about it's about translating that into the space with the right elements. So it gives you, you know, I suppose, and on a very dark wall, this will look fantastic. As will this in that particular colour palette. So particularly with the orange being backlit, that just really provides something that's just a little bit more invigorating in that colour theory. That just works on something a little bit more rested again for those colours. So this one, again, I quite like because it's got very rich tonings on the outer perimeters of the image. You get a little bit of the orange, you get a little bit of the green and a little bit of the blue, but it's a slightly different interpretation. But you could start off with that bird beginning to give you the palette, and then you work from there as to what does work.
Sure.
So from here, this is just getting into another colour theory. It's very much with what we're working with here, what we have on the stage at the moment. So we've got with the flooring, we've got, like the wall, there's a yellow base, there's a warmth in the colouring. The primary carpet that's on the floor with the sisal, it's actually got quite a lot of yellow, but there is like quite a rich sort of charcoal, and it just got it gives a lightness, but it also gives the depth, and it's connecting to the wall colour directly. Once we, like David and I, had selected these 3 carpets, or sisal carpets, then I selected the wall colour. Because I wanted something rich, I want to show the example that the walls receding away is actually going to give you a greater sense of space, and particularly with the artworks, it makes the artworks pop a lot more. And actually,
what a wonderful way to disguise TV as well. Use it as a piece of art.
Exactly. Voila.
There you go.
That's what. And imagine if you could just click and change.
Well, you can. We are.
I know. Exactly.
We're layering the images. Do you like that?
That's exactly right. This one I love, and I could go on about birds and their beauty forever, but I won't. This is actually a fishing owl, and it's in Japan, and it's in beautiful shot, just catching. The owl has caught his prey, and he is about to take off out of the water, and just the perfect symmetry, the detail, like, to me, that's just a beautiful expression of nature and its uniqueness and awesomeness.
Absolutely beautiful, isn't it? The symmetry is amazing.
And like
you'd be really annoyed if you lost a feather, wouldn't you?
That's right. Look, some birds are missing a finger in their feathers, so I didn't put those in the slideshow. I'm sorry. But you can see the determination in his eyes. Like, yep, I've got it. We're off. So it's just beautiful. But you've got those warm colours. So within the space we've got designed here, you can see all those colours are actually present in that particular image. So you can either have the image and the space and elements responding to that image, or you can just use that simply for inspiration and then, you know, go from there. But this is a bedroom interpretation of some of those colours we've used here. So there's no orange, but we've got the yellow in the lighting, and we've also got those silvery to warm charcoals in a lighter palette, in a restful palette for the bedroom. But it's not just the colours that are soothing and relaxing. It's also the elements in, you've got the curtains that adds that sense of warmth and embracement. But you've got the rug, you know, that sort of furry rug on the floor gives you another tactile, visually tactile quality. The bed linen, you've got the linen fabric on the footstool end. And you've just got that panelling in the wall that acts as acoustic panelling as well. So
and interesting, you could be quite tempted to have a blue light in that room, but it would change the environment completely. So the yellow light has a very important element. But even the handles on the side tables there, I mean, that gives
just a small detail.
Small detail that adds enormous dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think back to the kitchen we showed with that light, that's serviceable because that is a high function area. It's probably one of the most highest functioning areas of the house. So this just sort of gives you a softer, moodier aspect. Oops. That's on its side. Sorry, just tilt your head.
Sleep on your head.
That's a bedroom. And you can see that image. Well, it's at the top. It's actually to the right. But in that particular image, you can see that I've actually used that in the room. It has an ethereal sense. It looks very backlit. It gives somebody, I don't know, a moment to ponder kind of thing. Oh, gosh, I don't know why that's happened. So this is the wall panelling. Basically, the brief with this particular client was short-term rental in Canberra for diplomats that are on short-term work projects. And it's to provide that person with the, you know, the sense of importance for why they're here, but it's also to give them that respite and that relaxation. And it's a very small apartment as well, but using the rich colour has actually expanded the sense of space in that room. Go again. Sorry, just tilt to the left.
We'll ask our little helper here.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just a bedside table. Those lights are hanging from the ceiling, and that just gives another dimension. It throws a pattern on the wall, but those particular lights have a vintage globe in them, so that gives it the warmth and that gives it that kind of ambience that you can just go in there and relax. The other elements are the tactile qualities of the velvet, so they actually work very effectively. Together, it gives contrast and interest, but it also doesn't overpower or take over the room. And the bedside table just has that direct the direct connection with the nature in the variations of the timber.
We're just reconfiguring it out the back there, but so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's not.
We'll keep moving forward. David, in regard to nature, I mean, clearly Cassandra's talking about the inspiration of nature, but flooring is your speciality. Is it the same with with colorations and the things that you put together?
It is, and everything that we sell is actually a plant fibre, so it's nature anyway. And when
you say what plant?
It's the main fiber's sisal, which is made from the agave plant, which is cactus fiber. So it's antimicrobial, which means it repels dust mites, and it's very hard wearing, and it's suitable for all areas of the house and commercial wear. But really, when I go looking for new products, I'm looking at the color palette, and obviously we look at trends in Europe and what's happening there. But we are actually on a same level. You know, we never used to be. 20 years ago, we were behind Europe, but now it's definitely a smaller world in the floor covering industry anyway, as I've seen it. You know, so. Yeah. You know, try and keep it to the warm neutrals and the texture. Yeah.
So is there any rule in regard to the Australian colour palette is eucalypt greens, the sage greens and the burnt oranges, etc. So we identify with those colours living here, whereas in England, for instance, or the United Kingdom, it's an apple green as opposed to a eucalypt green. So because we live in this environment, should we be gearing ourselves towards that palette, or is there no rule?
No, I think there's no rule at all, because we typically associate Australia with exactly with that colour palette, and you think of Uluru and you think of those, but like what you're sitting on would be perfect on top of, you know, Ayers Rock kind of thing. Like it's a perfect palette.
Maybe not practical.
No,
but
not very well. I'm not bringing it up there. But when you think about those more lime yellow-based greens, warmer-based greens, new growth type greens, you do think more of England. You think perhaps more of the formal gardening. But we also have that too in our rainforests. So you go to the rainforest and you have a plethora of that particular colour palette.
good point.
And it's so, you know, and yeah, we don't initially identify with that. But I think one of the things with wellness, you know, through the aspects of your interior, it's important to note that science understands that nature does have a restorative effect, and it's been physiologically tested, and their results have come in that it's quite significant. That, for example, with the studies were done, a controlled study on people working in an office environment just based on mild stress that people experience in a day, and heart rate, etc. Physiological aspects are measured, and you've got a group A that have got a beautiful literal nature view outside their window, a park ground, beautiful. But Group B just have four walls. There's no picture of nature. There's no actual direct connection at all with that. They have to use their imagination to think of it.
Well, it's wonderful how now, I mean, dementia therapy, they're using gardening. They're using gardening for all sorts of different therapy, which is exactly what you're saying.
Absolutely. And the difference between the two groups is there's such a strong difference in the physiological response to healing from that stress. And those that had the nature connection healed so much faster that physiologically than those in the room without a connection to nature. And I think in our home, I think it's important to acknowledge we have an innate bond. It's not... It's just there.
Sure.
You don't have to develop it, but I think it's important to recognise and connect with what matters to you most, what gives you the inspiration or gives you the direct connection.
Sure. The message is get out into the garden, guys. I think that's the message, is it?
Yep.
There we go. Okay,
Just
we're back on track.
Observe. Yes. Oh, perfect. Yay. Okay, where we go. So, in this particular interior, so back to the Diplomat in Canberra, you know, it's got interest. It's that picture is just quite calming, particularly if you're wanting a room, like it could be your own guest room, for example. You might have different people utilising that room, or a living space where within your family you've got a great deal of different personalities. Sometimes it is better to go with something a little bit more conceptually abstract, so that anyone can read their own thing in it. So in this context, for a bedroom to be calm and relax, you know, having something that can be interpreted anyway, but just feels a little bit ethereal, is a little bit more relaxing.
And once again, you've got the yellow light there rather than the blue light, so that's all been done on purpose to give you that lovely mood that you're trying to create.
It's enhanced with the drop lighting either side on the bedsides. They've got vintage globe lights, so that gives that direct ambient warmth. But in terms of detailing for the client, the ceiling has the halogen lighting, so if they want the task lighting, it's a separate switch. They're both on dimmers. So it just gives the client the option.
And you mentioned before in the earlier presentation about the materiality here. That's a great example of the fact that you've got reflective materials that actually throw light as well.
Yes, that's exactly right. Like, so that those fabrics, the gold and the silver velvets, they're like got beautiful patterning to touch. They're beautiful to touch. So there's a visually tactile. And we talked about that earlier, where it's important to have elements in the space that you look at and engage in and say, I want to touch that. It's visually engaging you and then physically engaging you. And that's part of the happy response to the space. So
pillows. We're back to Cassandra's pillows. My question is, can you have too many pillows?
No. Well, if you ask a lady, no. If you ask a man,
yes.
But they're all two-sided. So like I have here, you have the option. You can slightly change your look very quickly with no cost.
So we don't have 10 pillows, we have 20.
That's right.
Right,
that's right.
okay.
We've got some on the floor there as well. But, you know, also having the element of timber in there and providing that direct connection with nature, a little bit of planting. They're real plants in the room.
Thank goodness. Real plants.
Real plants.
Why not get real plants? If you're going to go to the effort, get real plants.
Well, there is a scientific wellness aspect with plants as well. Some people think, oh, it's not healthy for all the for all the microbial elements, but it actually is. We come from nature. Having an environment that is too sterile is actually having adverse effects on us. So it's in turn, we know with gut bacteria, we know with any level of our own microbiome that lives within and on us, you've got to keep a healthy balance. If it's not a balance on your skin, you get an irritation. So
I was
here...
talking to Paps Landscaping, who provided the plants. You've got a stand over, further over as you enter the exhibition. And they've got the green walls. And I said I've seen this wonderful green wall where it's a combination of fake and real plant.
Yeah.
And he said, well, that's great. And I said, what a great concept, because, I mean, then it's lower maintenance. And I was raving about the whole concept. And he said, but did you think about the fact, he said, that the fake plants fade. So that the maintenance becomes a higher issue
And
because
higher
the UV
cost.
fades all the plants and it becomes a disaster. So, once again, real plants.
Well, the interesting thing about real plants in your space, and you can purchase plants that have minimal effort to maintain as well, but they do have a healing benefit in context of they absorb the toxins in the room. So you can have one plant, and per every 30 square meters in your home, they reduce the toxins in the air by 87%.
Wow.
So, but what the plant does is quite amazing. It draws the toxins in through the leaves. It takes the toxins down into the root system, and it actually converts that toxin to food for itself into the root system to come back up. So it's pretty amazing.
You've got a bit of Don Burke in you, haven't you?
I know. And I think...
Jill of all trades.
I know. But it's... that's it. But, like, you know, a bit of David Attenborough as well, I think. Where do we get on to the other birds?
Let's go to the next slide.
Okay. So this is just giving you another interpretation that's a direct response to this. There's no orange, but you can see with the gold, to chocolate, to terracotta, to the charcoals, there's a great deal of variation. For some, that might make them feel a little woozy, but, you know, if you like it, it's a great interpretation. So here we go.
Wow.
Here's a stunning
automatically,
young fella.
That came on totally unexpected, but automatically your emotion changes seeing life, don't you?
You can see with the colours, what I've done is I'm extending the colour palette, so taking on a journey with the colour palette, and as you say, that's right, you have your own response to that. So it's about identifying your response and then honing in on what works for you.
Oh, he looks sad, doesn't he?
Well, it kind of looks sad. Cool. It's like a moment has occurred.
It's like Dave.
And oh, wait for the next one. But that's working with the rich chocolate. So if you really love those rich chocolates, it's giving you so much variation. And if that responds for you, and to me, it's like he's quite reflective, philosophical, but, you know, he's keeping a sharp eye out kind of thing. So that's it. There's a personality there, is my point. As we have with our owl over there, perfect. I love the eyes. They're just jutting out. But that spark of orange, it just gives an immediate connection. Every aspect in your space needs to have a direct connection. And actually, we're talking about, there we go.
Wow.
Another handsome, it's a baboon.
Wow.
But there is such beautiful colouring in that. And he's fascinating. He's very interesting. Just the way the colour, where he looks a bit cheeky, really.
He does.
Like he looks like he's getting up to no good.
Yeah, I like him.
But, you know, the colours, like the you know, the kind of blonding, but then with that soft orange, and then you get all that variation in the sort of chocolate browns. There's a slight, you know, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And if you look at his hands, it's almost like he's...
Yeah. Yeah, we're all getting it.
It's pretty cool. So it may respond for you. This here is a rock vulture. Now, I think that has a beautiful colour palette. I particularly like vultures. I think they're part of nature's cleanup crew. They get represented in a negative way, like they're a problem. But there's aspects happening in veterinary science with anti-inflammatory medication given to livestock in certain parts of the world that has a chemical that when the vultures actually do their cleanup job of a carcass, it's causing liver failure in the vultures. And the vulture population across the world has dropped in 10 years, like just over 90% because of this particular chemical. So, you know, that's a diversion aspect, but I just think beautiful, the colours, like the previous image with the baboon, there's just temperatures and palettes that aren't, you know, strong indirect colour. There's so much variation can draw timber colours out of that. You can translate that into many aspects of the room. Throws and cushions, wall colours, curtains, accessories, and everything.
Of your hair.
Siberia, this is the land of fire and ice. So you've got your glaciers, but they're meeting with the boiling, you know, little sort of rock pools that you can see the steam in the foreground. So these are just some images that show just all that variation of colour when the snow is melting and you can see the steam coming up out of the ground. It's just fascinating. It just gets such beautiful colours. So this kind of image shows you that you can mix timbers. You can have your blonde timbers. You can have your walnuts. You can mix it in, but the image gives you the confidence. If this is your colour palette and you respond to how that works together, it gives you that success. But here's another example of that particular colour palette, something completely different. To me, he's just awesome. And on a very dark wall, that just looks fantastic, and it's like he's coming towards you.
Yeah.
But you've got the dark chocolate, and you've got that sort of orange, but you've got the white, and it's just, in a way, to me, he looks protective.
Yes.
So that's a nice feeling. And same again here, just peaceful, relaxed. He's in his environment and he's happy and he's relaxed. So you can take from that the contrast of walnut in your timber and white in some surfaces, but then you've got the colours that are within the tiger as well. As we have our image here, it's those orange eyes. It's all that colour in the feathering, just provides so much detail. And it gives you the confidence to be comfortable with the combination of colours that you
I
might
take it
want
back.
to put
That's the
together.
inspiration for your hair.
This is homage to the orangutan, but then I found this little guy. I just put that in there for fun. But he's cool. But that is an interpretation of all the colours we've looked at in an abstract context. So, you know, if you like those, that can be an element that's in the room somewhere that's something different, but it still responds. This guy's beautiful, so subtle. If you prefer things that are said with less of a statement and more quiet, then this is a stunning image. You've got the yellow eyes, you've got a little bit of the brown in the feather, but it's just surrounded by, you know, the white of the snow.
Yeah.
But this is an interpretation of that colouring in an abstract aspect. And again, as we've got here on the stage, more of that aspect with more intensity along those lines, a little bit more intensity again, but then it leads to this colouring of this guy. Beautiful, like beautiful and warm with the owl and everything, and his contrast direct to that autumn, so it might bring back some warm memories, or you just might love that image. But that yellow with the white and brown and the black could be quite a stunning, you know, interior. And this is reflective of our previous scenario with the teal and the orange, an abstract view. But here, with all that colour palette that we've walked across, this is one interpretation. So you just might like the colours. You might like that sort of charcoal, the white, and that yellow, and how the sunlight plays on the wall as it goes deeper into the room and less light. It's the right colour to have a rich, bright yellow, but go into a slightly orange hue for that as well.
Is that wall ombre or is that just the lighting?
No, it's just the lighting. It's literally, how it responds. So again, it's just giving you those colour interpretations. Now we just get into a more intense palette with the yellows, and he reflects with this guy. You know, again, it's in autumn, but it just gives you a lovely contrast palette that you can actually work with, as does that. But here's an interior that you can represent those previous colours, where you have different elements in the room, but you've got the timber at the back, you've got the lush floor rug, but it's just nice to have the contrast, but it still looks like soft and calm.
What a different perspective. If you just went neutral or white bed linen there, and just and white curtains or neutral curtains without the orange, totally different environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that gives it a pop of colour, it gives it personality, and it gives it some vitality, doesn't it?
Exactly. So this previous image, you might have just connected to one of those colours, like, oh, wow, I love that red, I love that orange, I love that yellow or green. And looking at those, translating, you can, you know, put your personal style on it.
Don't see that rug there under that bed. So in that environment, I mean, what's the rule there? Is that the appropriate size?
It's not bad. It is not bad at all. It depends on the actual space of the room, but what I like about it is that you can literally get out of bed and you're still on the rug.
Yeah.
When we were looking at the bedroom before, with the fluffy white rug there, I mean, That was put there to style that room and that shot, because that was completely wrong in my opinion. It needed to be bigger. It just, but that's more balanced. Again, it's a thing of balance and being functional as well. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, so with this one, it just shows the orange, the greens, the blacks, the white, and a little bit of red. So it just gives you the confidence. If you respond to this positively, it gives you that confidence to play with colour successfully in the right balance. And these are a little bit more sharper in their colours. But this guy is quite relaxed and quite comfortable. And he's actually still within that palette of that bedroom we saw. It's just a different arrangement of proportioning. So I put him in because he also looks philosophical. But he's sitting there and it's all very calm. It's very relaxed. It gives me a relaxed feeling. But it's exactly the same colour palette as that interior, just shown in a different proportion rate. Again, those soft greens, but with the greys, and particularly like with David's carpets, you've got that combination of very earthy tones, the stones, into, as you're sitting on with the rich sort of sand ochre, into the onyx and into rich charcoals as well. You've got that basis, and I think it's talking about the plants, how they offer that literal health benefit in air quality. You know, with David's rugs, they're all antimicrobial, so not only does it have that direct aesthetic earth connection, but it also has that element where it's providing you with a direct health benefit as well. And you have those options to select where you can, to both aesthetic and practical. This is another just abstract interpretation of those previous images that we've looked at, and coming back across, it's just a way to interpret in an abstract. These are getting a little bit warmer. Oops, we're back with the same problem. Again, tilt your head to the side. But in this particular space, this is actually using the Namaji we have on this wall. This wall is Dulux Namaji, and I use that in this particular. This is the apartment in Canberra. And again, the client wanted to relate directly to the park that's in front of. It's a beautiful park, lots of like well-established trees, quite formal, but it's great for the city to utilise. And it has the colour of like all the colours of autumn. So he wanted clients to remember the park when they left his apartment from a marketing perspective of keeping consistent rental. So we've got that direct connection, but it's an individual connect. It's not literal. It's not all just here's an autumn leaf and here's, you know, a tree. But you just on the tail, just what's on the lower screen now, the orange and green, and with the wall colour there, you can see the prints that have been done, or the photography that's been put onto stretch canvas. And you can see that you're actually getting all those autumn colours in a more abstract configuration. That's better. So it's a combination, but the dark rye, which is that sienna colour, similar to the chair that you're on, John, that just works so well with the Namaji. It's still keeping that warmth, but there's enough black and grey charcoal in the colour to keep those tones harmonious.
Sure.
It does. It does. And then on the opposite wall is Norsewood. It's quite a rich charcoal, but it's a very warm charcoal. But what I've tried to do in this space, and like David's talked about with the rugs, is define the space and the function in the zone. It's actually a very small room. The dark colours have receded away and the artwork's put forward. There's no cluttering in the furniture. There's enough room to move around everything to utilise the function. But there's just fun, playful colour use. And so if you just looked at all those cushions on their own in a room, you kind of think, well, it's a bit odd. But it all relates and connects quite comfortably.
Sure. Yeah,
and even the gallery wall defines the dining space. It stops on the dining space. This is one of the images used. So it's got we use the Norsewood. We also use the Rakiai, which is a lighter version of the Norsewood. But basically we had 5 paint colours through that small apartment, and they just harmonised beautifully. The picture I just showed previously, the abstract, putting things that you wouldn't imagine to put together, but it actually invigorates the eye and invigorates the mind. It makes you want to connect and understand. We have that innate aspect of, for survival, we want to understand. So if you just cleverly and carefully connect with that, you're emphasising that sense of belonging. And
Yeah.
We have that with the kitchen. Again, the timbers, a close-up of a bark tree, as well. So it just shows you that in a small space, the use of like, you know, rich, deep colours, but accentuated, you know, with lighter furniture, like the timbers, and just playing with the colours, it just creates, it's invigorating, it's inspiring. So for someone coming short term, they're feeling important to be in the space, but it's still all directly connecting with nature, so they feel that relaxation immediately. And that's just a close-up of the honey colour of the timber. So this is a direct image of nature and thing. And that has a great array of colours. So these are just some more images that show the same colour array but in a different setting.
Yeah, yeah.
For that.
Okay,
A little bit, not much. Yeah. So this just gets more into we're talking about with the lime greens. It just gets a little bit more into that dark charcoal and the lime greens, working with that. Can you see who's hiding there? But here's an interpretation of those colours. So the almost black to the white that was in there and to the green. So you can have a very contemporary translation to those images. And again, you've got that colour palette. And then we have a wise old owl.
beautiful.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, any questions for Cassandra or David? Anybody renovating at the moment? Anybody need colour advice? Any questions? No? Would you please thank David and Cassandra for this afternoon? And they'll be around anyway. If anybody's got a question, please make yourself known. Thank you. Thank you, guys.